All right, hello everyone. Um, this week's module, we're going to talk about ILS. It's going to be Koha for just about everybody. Um, so we're going to focus on that one. But just like last week, before we start in on the ILS, we're going to review and see if we have any questions about the browsers. Anybody have any questions about what we covered last week? We talked about configuring browsers, where the various configuration options are. I had a sheet or a page there in the Moodle about what the options were to configure. Anybody have anything they wanted to ask about or have thoughts on the content or questions? Okay. Well, it was not a super challenging week, so I understand there were no questions. We did have one person pop in and say that they liked, they preferred Chrome as their browser of choice, and gave some reasons. Because of the speed, I think, and the ability to have everything right there. So that was kind of interesting. The other thing that I wanted to talk about before I get into the ILS is to remind you all that it's time to start scheduling those one-on-one sessions where you can we can review what we've done, and you can ask questions directly of us via Zoom. So if you want to talk to Dan and see about getting those set up, he's ready to go, he tells me. Okay.
One thing that people were having some issues with last week, Robin, is some of the open-endedness of that quiz. So there was pretty much everybody got the last question wrong just because they didn't know the format. Although some of you did, and it's kind of creepy that you were able to figure out exactly how Robin had typed the question. But anyways, I just wanted to point out that I did try to correct some of your scores to give you full credit because I know you're really, really worried about that.
Yeah, that I tried. I will promise you there are no open-ended questions in this module. That was an experiment and it failed on me. So I'm trying to kind of vary the question types to make it a little more interesting, but that one is just too difficult for you to ask you to come up with exactly how I think, because honestly, that's a little scary if you guys think the way I do. So no open-ended questions this time, I promise. Okay, so our goals for this module, basically we wanted to just make sure you all are familiar with the ILS. In Express, we use Koha. That's our integrated library system software. It is an open source software. It's free as in kittens, not free as in beer, which means we pay a support solution provider, in our case it's Bywater Solutions, to host and provide support for us. So while we're not paying for the software itself, we are paying for hosting and the ability to have somebody to answer our questions and fix our issues so that we are not responsible for it, which is probably a good thing. What I wanted to make sure you understood in this week was how to use the staff side to find patrons, edit patron data, find items, not necessarily editing item data. That is a little bit beyond the scope of this course for copy cataloging, but I do have a link for you later on that if you have interest in editing items in the catalog, you want to do a little copy cataloging. Heather put together an introduction to copy cataloging things that I did link to. So, and then beyond just being able to move around in the staff side and do what you need to do for your work, I also wanted to make sure that you understood how the OPAC works. A lot of times we get stuck in the staff side of the ILS because that's where we need to be to do our work. And we discover that things have changed in the OPAC since the last time we went there. Patrons are asking us questions we don't know. So I want to be sure and encourage you all to use the OPAC for just general searches and that kind of thing as much as possible, just so that you stay familiar with the way it works. And then finally, best practices for creating new patron cards, checking books in and out, performing work duties, all of that good stuff. George has provided me with a lovely document that I have linked on the Moodle site that you can download, and I strongly encourage you to download it and share it with your coworkers. It is the best encapsulation of Koha best practices I've seen in a very long time. So, did anybody have any questions about the whole open source thing? I kind of went through it a little quickly, but
It might be good, Robin, just since we throw that around a lot, just to talk about some other open source software and how it's different from where you get your problem solved in an open source world versus proprietary.
And that's one of the reasons why we are paying for support. Open source is not generally, it's community driven. There's not a company behind it. So if you have problems with Microsoft Office, you know that you can go to Microsoft.com and find answers. There is a company there. If you're having real issues, you can call them and talk to someone at the company who can answer your questions. Sometimes Microsoft is a little difficult, but the general idea is for software that you pay for and that is closed source, there's a lot of support from the company. Open source is generally not supported by any one company. There are vendors of like Koha, like I said, we use Bywater, but most of the time for open source, your technical support is going to come from the community. And it's going to come from volunteers who have written documentation. And I will tell you right now that the least favorite thing of any coder is to write documentation. So sometimes that documentation is sparse to non-existent, but Koha is actually pretty good. They, because there are companies behind, working with Koha, they can sometimes devote people to documentation in ways that other open source software such as LibreOffice you may be familiar with. That is a Microsoft Office replacement that is free, Libre being Spanish for free. It's Romance language. And then there are like the WordPress software that we use for our websites is a free open source software. And the idea behind open source just means that the source is open. I can get into the WordPress backend and make any changes I want. There's no, it's not encrypted and I can't, touch it, which means one, there are a lot more people looking at it and helping, a lot more eyes on it, keeping it safe. And two, it's very easy for hackers to get into the code and find the various holes that people haven't found. So it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But there's LibreOffice, Koha, Firefox is Chrome are both open source browsers. Chromium is actually the open source base of Chrome that Google has taken. And then some of you might be using LibKey. That is a open source alternative to like Envisionware. Again, because it's open source and there's not a company behind it, it doesn't quite have the same functionality that Envisionware would have right now, but it's getting there. So that is
one good thing that to think about though is, we've not been able to support Macs with Envisionware for the last year. If you really have no control over the company worrying about supporting Macs anymore. So with open source, you definitely have a lot more power to get developments in place. It's a nice benefit to it. Whereas when you're dealing with proprietary software, you really have no say in how they choose to put out patches.
And you'll notice there's some things in Koha. I'm sure if you've been around for a little while, you've heard Heather talk about developments that we have paid for. We as a organization give money to Bywater, who then hires programmers to make changes to Koha that we want. That's not something you can do in CIRCE, Dynex, or III. You can request that things be added, but if it happens, great. If it not, it's more likely to not happen than to happen. So that's just kind of a quick introduction to open source and what I mean when I talk about Koha being an open source integrated library system. It's free as in kittens. We still have to pay to support it, just like you have to pay to take your cat to the vet. But the actual software itself is free. Okay, so in the staff side of Koha, which is where probably most of you spend most of your time, there are a bunch of different ways to do just about anything. There's a search bar on top, there are the menu items on the circulation page. There's a bunch of different ways to get to, say, the patron search, which is where I'm going to start. When you search for patrons, you can use and I'm going to bump ahead real quickly. You can use the search patrons tab here. You can go up here to patrons and click that, and that will take you to basically this page. Or if you're on the circulation page, the home page, there's a button called patrons. So there's a bunch of different ways to get to the patron search. Some tips for searching for patrons: start with the minimum amount of information needed. Some people who use Koha and enter things in Koha are human, and sometimes they might misspell something. So it's easier to, if you're looking for somebody with a interesting name, to start small and just look for the first few letters. But once you find the patron that you're looking for, especially if you're looking for somebody who says they need a new account or whatever, one of the best practices things we'll talk about is before you create a new account, you always search Koha to make sure they don't have an account, because there are so many differing ways that information can be entered. Koha doesn't check to make sure that duplicates are happening. So if you just enter somebody in there, they're just in there twice now. So if you're looking for a patron and want to be sure that this patron is not the same patron that's asking for a new account, read through that patron data to confirm matches carefully, because you want to check that the name is the same. You want to check that the address is the same, maybe email address, that kind of thing. So we don't store social security numbers in our system. I don't think we store driver's licenses either. So you need to find, to identify patrons by kind of a combination of fields: name, address, email, phone, that kind of thing. And again, when we get to the best practices, we'll talk about updating all that and making sure it's as updated as possible. But that's basically, and I'll talk a little bit more about the mechanics of searching for patrons in just a second. But I also wanted to talk just briefly about searching for items. Again, you can do that search from a couple of different places in Koha. And right now you're kind of searching the entire database. But one of the things we have coming soon, this is a development that we have paid for. We're paid for half of it. We'll pay for the other half when they install it in our system. But the ability to limit by library on staff side. So if you go to the OPAC and do a search, you can say, I just want to find things at the Bonner Springs library. And you'll limit it by that. In the staff side, that's not possible. You can, after you searched, then limit to Bonner Springs, but you can't do it to begin with. So that's something that's coming soon. So this search the catalog, the fourth thing under the little tab text box here is where you go to search for items. Searching for patrons, for some reason is, well, because names are weird, is a little bit more difficult. And so I wanted to go through the searching for patrons process. So you can start off by searching for patrons by entering their name in the search patrons box and clicking, I have submit, it's actually search, but click the button. I also wanted to point out this plus sign between the text box and the search button. If you click on that, that will open up a lot of these same filters that you see over here in this box. So you can search by various fields, you can limit it to a certain library, you can limit it to a certain patron category. All that's kind of like an advanced search for patrons. If you're having problems finding someone that way, you can also go and browse by last name if it's not too common. If you're looking for a Smith, you're going to have problems. You're going to have issues. But if you're looking for a name that's not terribly common and you're not sure if you're spelling it right, you can always do a browse. So I just kind of wanted to point out those different ways of finding patrons, which is very important when you're creating a new patron to go through this and do the search as diligently as you can. So once you pull up a patron, there is an edit button on the patron information screen that you can use to change their information. Right now, patrons can change their own password once they've logged in. Soon, coming within the next version or two, they'll be able to click on a forgot my password link and their password will be, well actually it's not, a password changing function will be emailed to them. We won't send them their password. But they'll be able to change their password even if they don't know it. So that's kind of a big thing right there. It's something that a lot of catalogs can do and Koha has not been able to until very recently. So anything else, however, email, address, telephone numbers, all that good stuff, you have to change for them. So that is kind of a data entry protection so that we're sure that we're all using the same information and entering the same kind of information. I mentioned earlier that editing items is possible, but beyond the scope of this week's class. So I'm not going to talk too much about copy cataloging other than to tell you that if you go to our libguides.necls.org, the very first libguide that we have is a how to start copy cataloging. So if you have any questions about how to change items, how to adjust things on an item or bib record, whichever, that is the place to go. Any questions about the staff side of Koha? Anybody run into anything that they would like clarified while I'm here?
I don't see anybody popping up with anything, and I don't know if you'll cover this later. There's a couple of things that people have been interested about when I mention it to them about Koha, just for their workflow. One thing I would say is a lot of people aren't opening information in new tabs a lot of time. So if you're going to be working and you find somebody, use the right click function to open links and new tabs so you don't have to get rid of your information. And a lot of times I see people going back to another screen. So just keep in mind that you can have multiple instances of Koha running in your browser. And then when you're done with a certain person, like looking up their checkout history, you can just close that and you're back at the screen that you were before. So just keep in mind that that's an option. Another thing, you were talking about the names of finding somebody, and I think even some information on media. At times people forget that they are already in a browser and they could open a new tab and search Google for the same information that might load a lot faster. So if you don't know how somebody's name, if it is strangely spelled, rather than having to ask them to repeat it, you might try doing a Google search where it's going to actually correct you where you can put your town of Leavenworth and this kind of stranger name and have it, and then you can copy and paste it into the catalog. Same thing with, I've seen people trying to find like release dates for information on different movies and trying to find that information in Koha, which is a very slow system. So if you have the possibility to Google something for that same information, I'd highly recommend that you're using that tool. That's going to be a lot zippier and faster to use. That's it.
Thank you. No, those are both things that I didn't put in here, and that are important. And it brings up for me as well the novelist subscriptions that we have, because one of the things at my previous library, we always had Amazon open in one of our tabs because our ILS could not link together series. So if someone came up and said, "Hey, I've just read this. What's the next book in the series?" Our catalog was useless. So we would go to Amazon, find the book, and Amazon would tell us what the next book in the series is, and then we go back to our catalog and find that book in the catalog for them. With novelists, we have the ability to have all that information right there in the OPAC. I'm not sure how easy it is to find on the staff side, but if you go into the OPAC, you can get access to novelists, which gives you series information, gives you read-alike information. If somebody says, "Well, I just read this book and I really liked it, what are some other books you have that are similar?" You can do a search on the on that title and find novelist suggested read-alike books. And thank you. That is an excellent question. Librarianship is nothing if not jargon-filled. OPAC stands for Online Public Access Catalog, and it is the patron side of Koha. Exactly. So, yes, library terms. So the novelist stuff on the patron side is really, really handy for helping patrons who are looking for something to read. And unlike my previous library when we did not have novelist, it keeps you from having to go to Amazon and find that information. And thank you. Dan has the OPAC link right there. So the OPAC, as I said, is Online Public Access Catalog. It is a little bit of library jargon that is in pretty wide use, but that's only us library nerds who use it. So anyway, the best practice for the OPAC is to use it as much as possible. Try to use it, if you're searching for something, try to use it instead of the staff side. And there is a link at the top of the staff side that just says OPAC. Click on it, that will open it up in a new tab, and you can go and do your search. You have access to your novelist information. You'll see how it works for your patrons so that when they have questions, you can answer them. And you can also maybe find some pain points that are in there that you can then report to us and let us know so we can hopefully fix them. So the best practice for the OPAC is teach other people how to use it. Teach your patrons. When they come in and ask questions, it's kind of a fine guessing game there as to whether they just want the answer right now and they don't care how you get it, or that they want you to teach them how to find the answer in the future. If you think that your patron is the kind that would really like to know the answer, teach them how to use the OPAC. Teach them how to do searches. Teach them how to log into their account. Teach them how to place holds through the OPAC. That will offload some of the more techie people into doing it themselves so that you have more time at the desk to work on more complicated questions. The OPAC has facets. Those are along the left-hand side once you do a search. That is a way to limit information. One of the best practices that we'll talk about here in a minute is it's best to use those limits before you search. just because of the way Koha works. If you do a search for something kind of extensive, like BAT, and it may bring back 40,000 records, those facets are only going to reflect the 100 records, the first 100 records. So if Richmond has Richmond Library has a BAT book, but it's 101 or below, it's record number 101, that is not going to be an available facet. The library is not going to be an available way to limit your search. So you can look through and you'll never see Richmond on there. If, however, you limit your search first to Richmond and then do a search on BAT, you will find Richmond's BAT offerings, whatever they are. I have not actually done that search, but so I want you to be kind of aware as you're playing around this week. Those facets on the left-hand side of the OPAC are how you hone in on a particular kind of record. You can limit by library, you can limit by format. So if you've got a patron who requires large print books, you can do that. You can say, okay, I don't want to see all of these records, I just want to see large print. It will do that for you. See library, format. There's a lot, publication date, all kinds of different ways you can limit what you see. And that's going to be on your left side. And then there's also on the OPAC, if you'll notice down here at the bottom of the screen, there's an advanced search that also gives you access to those limits. They're called limits before you search and facets after you search, but they're basically the same thing. So that gives you access to those limits so that when you're doing a search, you can pull just what's relevant, what you need. So this is your OPAC down here at the bottom of the screen. This is your OPAC search bar. And you can choose all libraries or you can choose a particular library, but those are really kind of your only limits that you have right there on the basic search. If you want to limit it to just large print or just Blu-ray DVDs or just not Blu-ray DVDs, whatever your patron needs, you'll go to the advanced search and set those limits before you search. So do you have any questions? I know facets is not a common term in use. It's even less common than OPAC, but it is what they're called. So, okay. So in the OPAC, when you first go to the homepage, catalog.nextpresslibrary.org, you will see a box kind of off to the right that says log into your account. Here you will type in either your card number or your username, and you can set that in the profile page. When I said you could go in to edit your profile, your patron record, sorry, that's where you set that information for you and for your patrons. It's going to default, I think, to your card number, but I went in and changed it to Robin.Hastings because, quite frankly, I hadn't memorized my card number at that point. So, and then your password or your PIN, and then you click on Login. Once you have logged in, the first thing you're going to see is a summary of your account. These are books that you have checked out, you know, what's overdue, what needs to be renewed, all that good stuff. You'll see fines information is the next. So if you owe anything, that's where you go to find it. Personal details, you can see your name, address, email, all that good stuff. You just can't change it from the OPAC. They'll have to contact you, and you will have to do it on the staff side. The OPAC does allow tagging, and that is kind of a top or bottom up categorization. So you can add tags, which are 1 or 2 word descriptions of any book at any time. And if you ever want to see what books you've tagged and what you've tagged them with, that's where you go. It is a good way to kind of help others figure out what's going on in the catalog. and help them kind of get an idea of what the books are about if people tag. Not a whole lot of people do the tagging, and so it's not terribly useful in our catalog, but if you guys start doing it, it will become more useful. I did mention that you can change your password. You can see your search history. Right now, that is, everybody can see their search history. George and I are talking about ways to let people opt out of that, so we're no longer saving their search history, so that if someone does come in with subpoena and say, I want to see everything that Dan Alexander has checked out in the last year, we can go, sorry, we don't have that information. Right now we do. And so it is vulnerable to a subpoena. And one of the questions I know in the quiz is does talk about when you can and cannot give out information. And if a subpoena comes, even if a subpoena comes, you can't give out information, but you can, excuse me, if you can get, send that to us and we'll find it. Give them the information and find it, simply because this is a shared catalog and it's not just your patrons in the catalog, it's everybody's patrons. So we, as the catalog administrators, and George specifically, I'm pointing that way because that's the way his office is from my office. George specifically is the final arbiter of whether or not a certain patron meets the subpoena requirements. So just in case you all aren't paying attention to the chat, Kayla has asked if there's a way for us to look up people's passwords, and there is not. We can reset it, but we cannot see it. Once it's in the password, once the password has been entered into the database, we cannot actually decrypt it. It is so strongly encrypted that we can't decrypt it. We can only change it. So that's what that is. And yes, we do keep patron reading history for 2 years. We do clear it out for logging purposes because otherwise the system would slow down considerably if we kept that information much longer. However, that information is not in the system anymore, but it is in a file that used to be Heather, now George has access to, so we can go back a little bit farther than 2 years if you ask us, but only we have access to that information. And Jay Garcia asks if a patron can change their login from library card to anything of their choice, and that is yes. You actually have to make that change for them, but yes, they can. So one of the reasons why that's another reason why that's, kind of goes through your staff is to make sure that the logins are family friendly and not crazy. So they have to, you have to change it for them. But yes, that is, the login is definitely something that can be changed in the patron screen, the patron edit screen. Are you guys fairly familiar with the patron edit screen? I'm getting more questions, and I would be happy to, maybe at the end, we can go in and look me up and see what my information is on the patron screen, and you can see where we go to change that stuff. So, okay, so purchase suggestions, those are things that people have asked for us to purchase. I would like to encourage you all to check your purchase suggestions. Patrons can put them in through the OPAC. On the staff side, you will see what items have been suggested by your patrons, and then you can go through and accept them or reject them. Often people will ask for stuff that we actually already own, but they couldn't find for whatever reason. So definitely keep a hold of that, keep track of the purchase suggestions for your library and make sure you're responding to those. I think last time I checked, which was within the last day or two, there were 188 suggestions that have not yet been responded to by library staff. So do keep track of that. Messaging is just messages from the library to the patron. That's how you send, hey, you left your scarf here at the library, come pick it up, or any kind of messaging you need to do that you want to the patron to be able to see. And then lists, anybody can make a list for any reason. We have a bunch of them in the public side. And if you have made a list for whatever reason, your list will be there. I also wanted to point out this digital sources section below. I won't go through all of them here. I'll leave it as an exercise for you guys to click through and see what all those are if you're not familiar with them. But I did want to point out that Access Flipster link, that is not there when you're not logged in. If you go to the OPAC before you log in and look at that digital sources section, you will not see Access Flipster. Once you log into the catalog, there it is. If you click on that, that takes you to the 22 or 23 magazines that we now have available through Flipster for the Nexpress Consortium. So if people have questions about how to get to Flipster, they've downloaded the app and they can't figure it out, they need to log into their catalog, which is perfectly usable. We do have it mobile friendly. Log into their catalog from the mobile site on their device, click on Access Flipster, choose a magazine, and then at the top left of the Flipster interface on the browser will be open an app. And it's not necessary to open a magazine in the application, but it is a much nicer experience. So I just wanted to point that out real quickly before we moved on. So the best practices, Georgia's best practice document is located on the Moodle class site. Please download it. Please pass it around to your coworkers. It's a really nice collection of all the various bits of advice we give out to you about how to work in Koha, just all put together very nicely for you. So some of the highlights from this document, it is 18 pages long, although it's not as long as it, he's got each section on its own page, even if it doesn't take up a whole page. And there are lovely screenshots. So it's not actually as long as it seems when I say it's 18 pages long, but it is thorough. So the highlights are: check the screen. Almost every error that happens in Koha happens because you're relying on audio cues and they're not real well defined. Not, the same beep happens whether an error message pops up or the book is checked in. So check the screen all the time. Just keep your eyes on it at all times. Search for a patron before you create the account. Joe Bob, there's a whole story in the book best practices document about Joe Bob and how he's trying to get away with getting a new record, and he's got $234 worth of DVDs that he has not returned, and we don't want to let him get away with that. So check your search for patrons before you create a new account. Try to use standard formats for phone numbers. The number dash or area code dash prefix dash number is the standard format. If everything is entered in a standard format, it is easier to search. If you enter your phone numbers with the parentheses around the area code and I do a search without the parentheses, I'm not going to find that phone number and I'm not going to find that patron. So do use the standard formats for entering in information as much as possible. When you're dealing with fines, waiving them, whatever, please remember to make notes so that the next person who comes along understands what you did and why you did it. It's just a courtesy for our fellow librarians. And I mentioned earlier, you apply the advanced search limits first and then search, and then from there, if you want to limit it even more, you can use the facets. But the way Koha works, it's best to apply those search limits first. Limits, however, are only as good as the person entering them, and most likely the person who entered them is human, and humans make mistakes, do typos. So if you're looking for something specific like Little House on the Prairie and it was copy cataloged as Little Hose on the Prairie, you're not going to find it. Same thing with limits. If you're looking for something that is large print and it didn't get copy cataloged in as a large print item, you're not going to find it. So just remember that you may be limiting more than you intend when you do limits. So if you're not finding what you want with a well-limited search, back up and do a full search and see what you can find. And then bringing it back to a circle, avoid making those mistakes that humans make by always watching the screen. Just keep an eye on what you're doing as you're doing it. So that was that. And I'm going to switch over to my browser. While I'm doing that, if you have questions, please enter them in the chat window or unmute yourself so that we can see what's going on. And I'm going to now share. There's only one Robin Hastings in the Koha catalog. So here I am. I mentioned this is where you go to edit things. Name, birth date, no laughing. Contact information. Actually, I need to get rid of this because I no longer have that phone number. Look at that. Primary and secondary email. This is your card number. This does not have to be the same as your OPAC username and login. And this will actually, depending on your permissions, for your patrons, your OPAC/staff login is only going to give them access to their account on the OPAC. But for you, because you are a associate card type, which as you can see, that's what I am, that also gives me rights to log into the staff. So this is how I log into both the staff side and my account on the OPAC. If I left this, well, actually, I think I'd have to add the barcode number down here if I wanted to do it that way. A lot of places just automatically do the barcode and then a password of last 4 digits of phone number or something when they create accounts so that they have kind of a standard automatic account. But you can do whatever you want there. You can have them set it up however you want to do it. There's your card number, the library that this patron will be associated with, and the, whoops, where'd it go? Oh yeah, the patron category. So like I said, for me, I'm a library associate since I work there. And then the rest is, you know, various things that you might want to change. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Oh, I don't know why they don't match. Okay. All right, so I don't know if you guys heard that, probably not because I've got my headphones on, but that was a nice little beep, and I have items overdue. I'm not going to show checkouts now because of that. But that's a basic patron entry screen. That's where you're going to go to make your changes to your passwords, to addresses, phone numbers, emails, all the various things that that you need to do as a just to maintain patron. Oh, there we go. There. So to maintain patron information, we'll create an account. Okay. If you don't create an account, I don't know that it has a default password. I have always created a password. That's a good question, Kayla. Let me see if I can find out, and I will post it on the Moodle class. I'm pretty sure there's no default password I think you just have to, I think it's just blank. Let me double check and make sure. Yeah, that's not a required field. So the required fields are in red here. So I don't think it actually creates a, no, sorry, I wasn't sharing my screen. You weren't seeing what I was seeing. But I don't think it requires, he yelled at George. I could yell at George. He's just right over there. Do you guys want to take a second to think of questions while I yell at George? Oh, okay, no, passwords is, okay. Hold on just a second. You guys think of some good questions for me. When I come back, I will have an answer for Kayla. I see you tried, Dan. George says no. If you leave it blank, it stays blank. So that should probably be, I would think that would, in that case, be a required field, but it's not. So you can create a patron with no login, username, and password, but not a good practice. I would suggest doing that. Nobody else came up with any good questions? Okay, well, that is what I had for the ILS. There are a few lessons on the Moodle site. Like I said, that best practices document is there. Please, at least half of the quiz is based on that document. So make sure you have that handy when you take the quiz. Like we said, open book is fine. I think that's it. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to send in an email or post on the Moodle class.
Robin, can you just mention what we've done in the past for Koha training? I know there's some new people here, and George is new, and
we are happy to come to you and do Koha training. We Leavenworth is one of our larger libraries, and so they go through staff a little more often than some of our others. And we have been actually going up to Leavenworth on a fairly regular basis, every 6 months or so, and just doing basic Koha training where we talk about how to, do all of the basic circulation functions, creating and maintaining patrons and all that. We also have a separate set of trainings that is just for copy cataloging. So if you want help with copy cataloging, that is a different training. And again, we're happy to come and walk you through that process as well. I think it's www.nexpresslibrary.org website has a couple of sections. One is Koha training, where we put the latest copies of the documents that we are using for training. And then it also has a Go Live section, which is where we put the stuff that we give to libraries, including bookmarks with Koha information. So like if you want a bookmark that says something along the lines of how do you plug into your OPAC or whatever, there's probably a bookmark for that. If there isn't, please let us know. We'll make one. Okay, so the question is, we often do an item search by entering, say, BATS, Baser, in the search bar. Will this give us different search results than setting in the facets or the limits? Yes, because that Baser, it is, BATS Baser is probably an easy enough way to do it and quicker. But if you want to be sure and get every library or every book owned by Baser, I would do the limits. However, because the item search in the search bar is keyword, it's going to pick up that Baser location, the owning library. You will be able to see that in the return. But so yeah, I'm not sure. The only thing I can think of is if you've got a bunch of items, you might have a hard time. It's a more search intensive, more computer intensive, I guess, search to do it that way than it is to specifically tell that tell the system that you are looking for Baser in this particular field, which is how the limits does it. So the only thing I can think of is it may take a little longer for the search to run if you do it that way through the search bar as opposed to through limits, but it shouldn't change the results too much, I wouldn't think. Does that help? Okay. And Dan did remind you all that taking a or sending an email to an expresshelp@neckles.org does create a trouble ticket that sends to all of us. And that actually, I think, was helpful this weekend when Jack from Bonner sent in a trouble ticket a half an hour before he opened saying, help, we don't have our holidays aren't correct. And we would like that fixed before 1 o'clock, and it was 12:30. So I got the email, made the change at I think 12:45, something like that, and it was taken care of. But if he just sent it to George, George was at Home Depot and he had left his phone to charge. So he didn't actually see that ticket until 2 in the afternoon. So that's one of the benefits of sending in a trouble ticket. You're not you're limited to just whoever you sent the individual email to. The trouble ticket goes to all of us. All of us can respond, and you're much more likely to get your question or request answered in a timely manner if you do it that way. Otherwise, it could get lost in the email in somebody's personal email box. So. And Dan's putting all kinds of information. This is how you get a hold of us. We do have, and I think it's up to date right now, but we do try to keep track of cell phones of directors whose libraries are open on Sundays, because we do our upgrades on Saturday nights. So it's our Sunday libraries that are first affected by all upgrades. And it's really handy if we've got your cell phone number for you directors who have libraries, Bonner, Baser, I know are here, and probably a couple others. That is, that's really handy for us. So I know when the Tonganoxie new director comes in, we'll have to hit her up for, or him, up for the cell phone number so that we can contact you, so that if there's major issues that happen with an upgrade, we can inform you as soon as possible. Okay, so there's lots of information about how to get help with your Koha issues. And the biggest thing I can say, the most important thing is send us an email at an Express Library or Express Help at Neckles, because that's going to get the fastest response and the most complete. Although, I was going to say Rossville, Adrian and Rossville sent one in, and George and I both took it, and we ended up changing her password to 2 different things, and it got a little confusing. But that happens much more rarely than somebody missing an email.
You were mentioning directors' phones. Something that I've run into over the years especially when the library is not open, is that we forget that we say call the library, but you're not open yet, and so you're not answering the phone. So if you are the person that's reaching out to us when the library is not open, you might think to just include your cell phone number or something like that. It's always a pain when we're waiting 30 minutes or so to try to fix a problem because the answer machine's still picking up. So, and also if you send in a ticket, do try to keep your email open. There's a really good chance that we're going to try to contact you back on that same ticket to get information, and it's just going to hold things up if it takes a long time for us to get specifics from you. So keep your channels of communication open with us, especially if you started it, because we might need to get back with you.
Okay. All righty. Well, the ILS class is open right now. You can jump on it and start in anytime. So enjoy. Please do not hesitate to ask if you have questions. I guess that'll do it for